The text message glowed on my wife's phone at 2:17 a.m. Miss you already, D. I stood in our marble-floored kitchen, holding Lena's iPhone like it was radioactive waste. She'd left it charging on the counter. First mistake in what I'd soon discover was a masterclass in deception. The house creaked around me, all designer furniture and cold surfaces that had never felt like home. My name is Ethan Mallory, and until that moment, I thought I knew my wife. Lena's heels clicked on the hardwood as she crept through our front door. I slipped her phone back onto the charger and pretended to pour myself water. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, makeup smudged, hair slightly mussed, wearing the black dress she'd claimed was too fancy for Beth's girls' night. "Hey, honey." Her voice carried that practiced casualness of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. "Didn't expect you to be awake." Couldn't sleep. I studied her face, looking for tells I'd somehow missed during our 12 years of marriage. "How was Beth's?" "Oh, you know how it is." Lena kicked off her heels, avoiding my eyes. "Too much wine, too much gossip. Beth's going through her divorce drama again." I nodded sympathetically, playing the role of the trusting husband. "That's rough. What's that perfume? Smells expensive." She froze for just a microsecond. "Beth got a new fragrance. She was spraying it on everyone. Smells like Tom Ford. Beth's got good taste." I smiled, knowing full well that Beth was allergic to most perfumes and had been for years. Lena forced a laugh. "I'm exhausted. Going to shower and head to bed." As she disappeared upstairs, I sat at our kitchen island, mind racing. The text could be innocent, maybe from her brother David, though he lived in Seattle and rarely contacted her. But the perfume, the dress, the careful way she'd constructed her story, my investment analyst brain started connecting dots I didn't want to see. I'd always prided myself on reading people, spotting inconsistencies in financial reports, catching the details others missed. It's what made me successful at Henderson and Associates. But apparently, I'd been blind to the biggest lie of all. The next morning, Lena acted perfectly normal. She made coffee, kissed my cheek, complained about her boss Derek Vaughn giving her extra work. The same Derek who'd been promoted to senior vice president at Morrison Financial, where Lena worked as HR director. Derek, who drove a silver Porsche and wore suits that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Derek, D. "Everything okay?" Lena asked, catching me staring at her. "Just thinking about the Henderson merger. Long day ahead." D. She squeezed my shoulder. "You work too hard, Ethan. Maybe we should take that vacation to Napa we talked about." "Maybe we should." But as she gathered her things for work, I noticed something else. Her gym bag, usually stuffed haphazardly with workout clothes, looked different, more organized. I waited until I heard her car pull out of our driveway, then investigated. Hidden in a zippered compartment I'd never noticed before, a second phone. My hands shook as I powered it on. Password protected, of course. But Lena had always been predictable with passwords. Our anniversary date worked on the third try. The message history made my stomach drop through the floor. Months of texts between my love and darling. Photos I couldn't bring myself to look at closely. Plans for when we can finally be together properly. The most recent exchange, from yesterday afternoon. "My love. Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear the black dress." "Darling, Ethan's working late. We'll have hours." "My love, I've been thinking about leaving Patricia. This sneaking around is killing me." "Darling, soon. Once the trust situation is handled, we can be open about everything." Trust situation? My blood went cold. The only trust in our lives was the one my father had established, the one that secured our financial future, the one Lena had access to as my wife. I photographed every message, every photo, every damning piece of evidence. Then I carefully returned the phone to its hiding place, my mind already working through the implications. Lena wasn't just cheating. She was planning something bigger. That evening, I followed her. Derek Vaughn lived in Harbor Towers, the kind of luxury high-rise that screamed, "I have more money than taste." I parked across the street, camera ready, feeling like a private detective in a bad movie. At 7:30 p.m. sharp, Lena's BMW pulled into the visitor parking. She sat in her car for a moment, checking her makeup in the mirror, then walked to the building entrance with the confidence of someone who'd done this many times before. 10 minutes later, they appeared together on Derek's balcony, 20 floors up. Even from my distance, their body language told the story. His hands in her hair, her arms around his neck, the kind of passionate embrace that spoke of familiarity and comfort. I took photos until my camera's memory card was full. Derek Vaughn. I'd met him twice at company parties. Tall, perfectly groomed, the kind of man who wore his privilege like an expensive cologne. Old Boston money, Harvard MBA, the golden boy who'd never faced real consequences for anything in his life. That was about to change. The next day, I drove to Murphy's Tavern, a blue-collar bar 3 towns over, where I'd occasionally grab lunch. Tony Marconi, the owner, had a reputation for knowing everyone's business. He'd grown up in our neighborhood before it got gentrified, back when regular people could afford to live there. "Ethan! Haven't seen you in a while." Tony wiped down a glass with practiced efficiency. "What brings you to my humble establishment?" "Needed to get out of the house. Marriage stuff." Tony's expression shifted to sympathetic understanding. "Ah, shit. Sorry to hear that. What's going on?" "You hear things, right? About people in the neighborhood?" "I hear lots of things. Most of it none of my business." He paused, studying my face. "But sometimes it becomes someone's business." I ordered a beer and waited. Tony had always been a straight shooter. "Your wife's been the talk of the country club," he said finally. "Her and that fancy boy Derek Vaughn. People see things, you know, parking lots, restaurants in the next town over." "I'm sorry, Ethan. I was hoping someone would tell you before..." "Before what?" "Before it got worse. Word is they're not just fooling around. There's talk about money, about some kind of business arrangement." My jaw clenched. "What kind of business arrangement?" Tony leaned closer. "Look, I don't know details, but my cousin Pete works security at your country club. He's heard conversations, something about your father's trust, about getting access to it. Pete thinks they're planning to screw you over financially." The beer tasted like ash in my mouth. "Thanks for telling me, Tony. What are you gonna do?" I stood up, leaving a 20 on the bar. "I'm going to handle it." That afternoon, I visited my lawyer, Simon Kessler, a sharp-dressed shark who'd earned his nickname Sly through years of ruthless divorce proceedings. His office overlooked Boston Harbor, all dark wood and leather-bound law books. "Ethan, good to see you, though I'm guessing this isn't a social call." I laid out everything, the photos, the texts, the trust concerns. Simon's eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "This is beautiful work, Ethan. Absolutely beautiful. She's handed us everything we need." "What about the trust?" "That's more complicated. If she's planning something, we need to act fast. I'll file papers to freeze any joint accounts and get a temporary restraining order on trust access. But we need more evidence of her financial planning." "How do I get that?" Simon smiled like a predator. "Leave that to me. I have contacts at Morrison Financial. If Derek and your wife are planning something involving company resources or insider information, we'll find it." That evening, Lena came home earlier than usual, seeming agitated. "Rough day?" I asked, not looking up from my laptop. "Derek's being impossible. He's putting pressure on everyone, making unreasonable demands." "I bet he is," I thought. "Maybe you should look for a new job. Get away from all that stress." She gave me a sharp look. "I can't just leave, Ethan. I have responsibilities, commitments, to the company or to Derek." "What's that supposed to mean?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Just seems like he's got a lot of influence over your decisions lately." Lena's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and I caught the flash of panic in her eyes before she composed herself. "I need to take this call. Work emergency." She disappeared into her home office, closing the door. I crept close enough to hear fragments of heated conversation. "Can't keep doing this. Ethan's getting suspicious. Need to move faster on the trust. Patricia's lawyer is asking questions." Patricia, Derek's wife. So she was getting suspicious too. When Lena emerged 20 minutes later, she looked shaken. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine. Just work drama." She forced a smile. "I'm going to bed early. Don't stay up too late." As soon as I heard her bedroom door close, I accessed our home computer. Lena had always been careless about logging out of her accounts. Her email was a goldmine of incriminating evidence: restaurant reservations, hotel bookings, even correspondence with a divorce attorney I'd never heard of. But the most damning email was from Derek, sent just hours earlier. "Darling, we need to accelerate our timeline. P is getting suspicious, and your husband might be catching on. I've spoken with my contact at the trust company. If we can prove financial irresponsibility or mental incompetence on Ethan's part, we can petition for emergency access to the funds. I know it's extreme, but we're running out of options. Once we have the money, we can disappear together, start fresh somewhere new. I love you. They weren't just planning to divorce me. They were planning to destroy me financially and psychologically, then disappear with my family's money. I printed every email, photographed every document, and started planning my own timeline. If Lena and Derek wanted to play dirty, I'd show them what dirty really looked like. The next morning, I implemented phase 1 of my plan. While Lena showered, I disabled her car's starter relay, a simple trick I'd learned from my mechanically inclined father. Not enough to cause danger, just enough to strand her at an inconvenient moment. I followed her routine from a distance. She discovered the car problem in the parking lot of her favorite coffee shop, exactly as I'd anticipated. After trying unsuccessfully to start the engine, she made a phone call. Derek arrived in his silver Porsche within 15 minutes. I watched from across the street as they had what appeared to be an intense conversation. Derek looked angry, gesticulating wildly. Lena seemed to be trying to calm him down. Their body language suggested this wasn't a romantic rescue. This was a crisis management meeting. My camera captured every moment. That afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number. "Ethan, this is Vivian Reeves, my ex-girlfriend from college. We'd dated for 2 years before I met Lena, and we'd remained friendly despite the awkward ending to our relationship." "Vivian, how did you get my number?" "I have my ways. Listen, I'm calling because I heard some disturbing rumors about your wife. I wasn't sure if I should get involved, but what kind of rumors?" "I work in legal consulting now. Word travels fast in our circles. There's talk that Lena and her boss are planning some kind of financial manipulation involving your family trust. Something about having you declared mentally incompetent." My blood ran cold. "Where did you hear this?" "Derek's wife Patricia hired my firm to investigate her husband's activities. She suspects the affair, but she's more concerned about financial irregularities. Derek's been moving money around, setting up offshore accounts. Patricia thinks he's planning to divorce her and disappear." "Jesus, Ethan, I'm telling you this because I care about you, but also because I think you deserve to know what you're up against. These people aren't just cheating, they're planning to commit fraud." After hanging up with Vivian, I sat in my home office, staring at the wall of evidence I'd accumulated. Photos, emails, financial records, witness statements. It was enough to destroy both Lena and Derek legally and socially. But I wanted more than legal victory. I wanted them to feel the same humiliation, the same betrayal, the same crushing realization that their entire world was built on lies. I wanted revenge. That evening, Lena tried to seduce me for the first time in months. She appeared in our bedroom wearing lingerie I didn't recognize, moving with the practiced sensuality of someone who'd been getting plenty of practice elsewhere. "I've missed you," she whispered, running her hands across my chest. The irony was almost funny. Here she was, trying to manipulate me with the same body she'd been sharing with Derek, probably on the advice of her divorce lawyer to establish marital normalcy before filing papers. "I've missed you too," I lied, playing along. Afterward, as she slept beside me, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. She thought she was manipulating me, but I was 3 steps ahead of her game. The next day, I put phase 2 into motion. I contacted Jenny Morrison, a junior HR employee at Lena's company who'd always seemed intimidated by her superiors. I'd met her at several company parties and remembered her as eager to please and easily impressed. "Mr. Mallory, what a surprise. Is everything okay with Mrs. Mallory?" "Actually, Jenny, I was hoping you could help me with something. It's about Lena's birthday next month. I want to surprise her, but I need some information about her schedule." "Oh, how romantic. Of course I can help." Over coffee, I carefully extracted information about Lena's work patterns, her meetings with Derek, and most importantly, about the upcoming company retreat where all the senior staff would be present. "You know," Jenny said, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "there's been some talk about Mrs. Mallory and Mr. Vaughn. People have noticed they spend a lot of time together." "Really? What kind of talk?" "Well, they have these long closed-door meetings, and last week, someone saw them having lunch at that expensive place downtown. It looked intimate." I feigned surprise. "I'm sure it's just business." Jenny nodded quickly. "Of course, I didn't mean to imply. I just thought you should know what people are saying." "I appreciate you looking out for us, Jenny." By the time I left that coffee shop, I had everything I needed for the next phase of my plan. That night, Lena came home late again, claiming she'd been working on a special project with Derek. "Must be some project," I said casually. You've been putting in a lot of hours. It's complicated. Financial restructuring stuff. You wouldn't find it interesting. Try me. I work in finance too, remember? She waved dismissively. It's different. HR financial stuff, personnel budgets, restructuring departments. Really boring. Every word was a lie, delivered with the casual confidence of someone who thought I was too stupid to see through her deception. Well, I'm proud of you for working so hard. I know Derek appreciates having someone he can trust. Something flickered in her eyes at that. What do you mean? Just that it's nice when bosses and employees have good working relationships. Trust is so important in business. She stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether there was a hidden meaning in my words. Yes, she said finally. Trust is very important. That weekend, while Lena was at her yoga class, which I knew was actually a hotel rendezvous with Derek, I implemented the most crucial part of my plan. Using information from Jenny and my own financial expertise, I began quietly moving our joint assets into accounts that Lena couldn't access. I also contacted the trust administrator and provided evidence of the potential fraud attempt, effectively freezing any access Lena might have claimed. By Sunday evening, I had quietly dismantled 12 years of shared financial infrastructure. Lena had no idea that her safety net had just disappeared. Monday morning brought the first crack in Lena's perfect facade. She discovered that her credit card had been declined at her usual coffee shop, the first sign that her access to our joint accounts had been restricted. She called me at work, voice tight with barely controlled panic. Ethan, there's something wrong with our credit cards. My card was declined this morning. That's strange. Maybe it's a bank error. I'll call them. I already called. They said the account has been frozen pending some kind of review. A review? What kind of review? They wouldn't tell me. They said only the primary account holder could discuss it. I paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. I'll look into it and call you back. But I didn't call back. Instead, I let her stew in uncertainty while I prepared for the evening's main event. At 6 p.m., I positioned myself in the parking lot of Harbor Towers, camera ready. Like clockwork, Lena arrived for her regular rendezvous with Derek. But this time, their meeting didn't look romantic. Through Derek's floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see them arguing. Derek was pacing, gesturing angrily. Lena sat on his couch, head in her hands. Whatever they were discussing, it wasn't going according to plan. After an hour, Lena stormed out of the building, Derek following her to the parking lot. Their argument continued outside, and I captured every moment. Told you this was moving too fast, Lena's voice carried across the parking lot. We don't have a choice, Derek shot back. Patricia's lawyer is asking questions, and your husband is obviously suspicious. Maybe we should just stop. Call the whole thing off. Derek grabbed her arm roughly. It's too late for that. We're in too deep. If we don't follow through now, we'll both be destroyed. Lena pulled away from him. Don't touch me like that. Or what? You'll run back to your boring husband? Face reality, Lena. You're as trapped in this as I am. I had everything I needed. That night, Lena came home looking haggard and defeated. She tried to act normal, but the stress was showing in every line of her face. How was work? I asked, not looking up from my laptop. Fine. Busy day. Did you figure out the credit card situation? She tensed. Not yet. The bank said they'd call back tomorrow. That's frustrating. I waited until she went upstairs to shower, then made my move. I printed out every piece of evidence I'd collected. Photos, emails, financial records, witness statements, and arranged them in neat stacks on our dining room table. When Lena came downstairs in her robe, she found me sitting at the head of the table like a judge presiding over a trial. What's all this? She asked, but her voice had gone very quiet. Have a seat, Lena. We need to talk. She remained standing, eyes scanning the documents spread before her. I watched the color drain from her face as she recognized the photos of her and Derek, the printouts of their emails, the financial records showing their planned fraud. Ethan, I can explain. Sit down. She sat. 12 years, I said calmly. 12 years of marriage, and you've been planning to destroy me for what? Money? Love? Or just because you could? It's not what it looks like. I held up a hand. Please, don't insult my intelligence any further. I know about Derek. I know about the affair. I know about your plan to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could access my father's trust. I know about the offshore accounts, the fake financial restructuring, all of it. Lena's composure finally cracked. Tears started flowing, but I felt nothing. How long have you known? She whispered. Long enough to protect myself. The accounts are frozen, Lena. The trust is protected. Your divorce lawyer won't be getting the retainer you promised him because you no longer have access to any significant assets. She stared at me in shock. You can't do that. Those are joint accounts. We're joint accounts. Amazing how quickly things can change when you have proper documentation of fraud attempts. A fraud? Ethan, you're being ridiculous. I slid a photograph across the table. It showed her and Derek in an intimate embrace on his balcony. This is from 3 weeks ago. Would you like to see the others? She looked at the photo, and something inside her seemed to break. The tears stopped, replaced by cold anger. So what now? You divorce me and leave me with nothing? Oh, Lena, divorce is just the beginning. I stood up, gathering the documents. You see, I've learned something important about revenge. It's not enough to just win. You have to make sure your enemies understand exactly how thoroughly they've lost. What does that mean? I smiled for the first time in weeks. You'll find out soon enough. The next morning, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. The Morrison Financial Quarterly Meeting was held at the prestigious Beacon Hill Country Club, where all the senior staff gathered to present their departmental reports. I knew about it because Lena had mentioned it weeks ago, back when she was still pretending to be my loving wife. What Lena didn't know was that I'd been planning my own presentation. I arrived at the country club early, dressed in my best suit, carrying a briefcase that contained the tools of Derek's destruction. Pete, the security guard Tony had mentioned, was working the front desk. Help you, sir? Ethan Mallory. I'm here about a security matter involving the Morrison Financial Meeting. Pete's eyes lit up with recognition. You're Tony's friend, the one with the cheating wife. That's me. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? Pete led me to a small office behind the main desk. I laid out my evidence. Photos, financial records, documented proof of Derek and Lena's fraud attempt. Holy shit, Pete whistled. This is bigger than I thought. I need a favor, Pete. Something that will expose them publicly, in front of all their colleagues. What did you have in mind? I pulled out a USB drive. The meeting room has a projection system, right? For presentations? Pete grinned. It does. And you know what? I think that system might malfunction right in the middle of Mr. Vaughn's presentation. At 2 p.m., I positioned myself in the country club's bar area, which had a clear view of the meeting room through large glass windows. I watched as Morrison Financial's senior staff filed in, Lena and Derek among them. Derek stood at the front of the room, confident and commanding in his expensive suit, beginning his quarterly presentation. Lena sat in the front row, looking professional and composed. They had no idea their world was about to explode. 15 minutes into Derek's presentation, the projection screen flickered. Derek paused, looking annoyed, then continued speaking. The screen flickered again, then went black. Then it came back to life, displaying not Derek's financial charts, but a slideshow I'd carefully prepared. The first image was a photo of Derek and Lena kissing passionately in his apartment doorway. The room went dead silent. The second image showed printouts of their explicit text messages, blown up large enough for everyone to read clearly. The third image was a financial document outlining their plan to defraud me and steal from my family's trust. Derek frantically tried to shut down the projection system, but Pete had locked him out of the controls. The slideshow continued, methodically displaying every piece of evidence I'd gathered. I watched through the glass as chaos erupted in the meeting room. Derek's face was purple with rage and humiliation. Lena had her head buried in her hands. The other executives were staring in shock, some taking photos with their phones. The slideshow's final image was a simple text message. When you play with fire, sometimes the house wins. Ethan Mallory. By the time Derek and Lena burst out of the meeting room, I was gone. But I wasn't finished. That evening, I drove to Derek's apartment building and waited in the parking lot. He arrived home around 7 p.m., looking like a man whose life had just imploded, which, of course, it had. I approached him as he got out of his Porsche. Hello, Derek. He spun around, face twisted with rage. You son of a bitch. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've exposed a fraud and an affair. I'd say that's a public service. Derek stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his height and expensive suit. You've destroyed my career, my marriage, my reputation. No, Derek. You destroyed those things. I just made sure everyone knew about it. He swung at me then, a wild haymaker that I saw coming from a mile away. I ducked easily and grabbed his wrist, twisting his arm behind his back and slamming him face first against his precious Porsche. "Here's the thing about bullies like you," I said quietly, pressing his face against the car's hood. "You're only tough when you think you're in control, but when someone fights back, you fold like a cheap suit." I released him and stepped back. Derek straightened up, his face red with humiliation and the imprint of his car's hood ornament. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Yes, it is. Your company will fire you by tomorrow morning. Your wife will divorce you and take half of everything you have left, and everyone in Boston's financial community will know exactly what kind of man you are." I pulled out my phone and showed him a video I'd recorded of our entire confrontation, including his attempt to hit me. "If you come near me or try to retaliate in any way, this video goes to every news outlet in the city, along with all the evidence of your fraud attempt. Are we clear?" Derek's shoulders sagged in defeat. Crystal clear. As I walked back to my car, I heard him slumping against his Porsche, the fight completely gone out of him. One down, one to go. Lena was waiting for me when I got home, sitting in our living room with 2 suitcases packed beside her chair. She'd been crying, but her tears had dried into cold resignation. "I suppose you're satisfied now," she said without looking at me. "Getting there. Derek's been fired. His wife is filing for divorce. The whole thing is already spreading through social media." I poured myself a scotch and sat across from her. "Play stupid games. Win stupid prizes. What about me, Ethan? What's my prize?" I studied her face, looking for any trace of the woman I'd once loved, but all I saw was a stranger who'd been wearing my wife's face for months, maybe years. "You get to start over. Isn't that what you wanted? A fresh start with Derek?" She laughed bitterly. "Derek won't even return my calls. Apparently, when the going gets tough, true love disappears pretty quickly." Shocking. Lena stood up, smoothing down her skirt with hands that shook slightly. "I'll be staying at my sister's until I can find an apartment. My lawyer says the divorce should be straightforward, given the circumstances. Very straightforward. You'll get what you're entitled to under the prenup, which isn't much. Everything else stays with me." "I know." She picked up her suitcases. "For what it's worth, Ethan, I'm sorry. Not for leaving. We both know this marriage has been dead for years. But for the way I did it. The lies, the scheming, trying to steal from your family. That was wrong." It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in months. Yes, it was. She walked toward the door, then paused. "You know what's funny? If you'd been this decisive and ruthless during our marriage, I might never have strayed. If you'd been honest during our marriage, I wouldn't have needed to be." She nodded sadly. "I guess we both learned something about ourselves." After she left, I sat in my empty house, sipping scotch and reflecting on the past few weeks. The silence felt different now. Not lonely, but peaceful. For the first time in months, I wasn't wondering where my wife was or what lies she was telling. My phone buzzed with a text from Tony. "Saw the news. Buy you a beer to celebrate?" Then another from Vivian. "Holy shit, Ethan, you're all over social media. Derek's career is finished. Well played." And finally, one from Pete. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Your drinks are on the house next time you're at the club." I smiled, feeling something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Satisfaction. Not just at winning, but at the way I'd won. Methodically, intelligently, using their own weapons against them. Finally, 6 months later, I ran into Jenny Morrison at a coffee shop downtown. She was with a friend, and they were gossiping about the latest office drama. "Mr. Mallory," she called out when she saw me. "How are you doing?" "Very well, Jenny. How are things at Morrison Financial?" "Oh, still recovering from the whole Derek and Lena situation. The company had to do a complete restructuring of the HR department. But honestly, morale is better now. Nobody liked Derek anyway. He was such an arrogant jerk." Her friend leaned forward conspiratorially. "Is this the husband, the one who exposed them?" Jenny nodded excitedly. "This is him. Ethan, this is my friend Sarah. She works in marketing." Sarah shook my hand with obvious admiration. "That was brilliant, what you did. I mean, terrible situation, but the way you handled it was just, wow. I just believe in truth and consequences," I said simply. "Whatever happened to them?" Sarah asked. "Derek and your ex-wife?" "Derek's working at a small firm in Hartford now. Significant pay cut, from what I hear. Lena moved to California. She's working as a human resources coordinator at a mid-sized company. What I didn't mention was that I'd made sure both of their new employers knew exactly why they'd left their previous positions. Professional courtesy, I'd called it." "Do you ever regret it?" Jenny asked. "I mean, it must have been hard, going through all that." "Finally, I considered the question seriously. No, I don't regret it. They made their choices, and I made mine. The only thing I regret is not seeing the truth sooner. That evening, I sat on my back patio, enjoying a glass of wine and reading a book. The house felt like home again, filled with my own choices and decorated according to my own taste. I'd removed all traces of Lena's presence and started over, just like she had. But unlike her fresh start, mine was built on truth instead of lies. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Ethan. This is Patricia Vaughn, Derek's ex-wife. I sat up straighter. Patricia, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I wanted to thank you. What you did, exposing Derek and your wife, it gave me the evidence I needed for my divorce. I got everything. I'm glad it worked out for you. There's something else. I'm starting a consulting firm, helping people who've been victims of financial fraud. I was wondering if you'd be interested in joining me. Your skills in investigation and analysis, combined with your personal experience, you could help a lot of people. I smiled, looking out at my garden where new flowers were starting to bloom. You know what, Patricia? I think I'd like that very much. 6 months after that, Mallory and Vaughn Consulting had helped expose 3 major financial fraud schemes and assisted dozens of people in protecting their assets from deceptive spouses and business partners. I'd found my calling, helping other people fight back against liars and cheaters, using the same methodical approach that had served me so well. 1 year later, I was featured in Boston Magazine as one of the city's top 40 under 40 inches business leaders. The article called me a financial detective who helps ordinary people fight back against extraordinary deception. They had no idea how accurate that description was. As I read the article in my office, a real office now, with my name on the door and a staff of 12 investigators, I thought about Lena and Derek. They'd tried to destroy me and steal my future. Instead, they'd given me something better, a purpose. Sometimes the house really does win. But the best part? I was just getting started.